The African nation that defeated Europe, the untold story of Ethiopia's victory over colonization. They came with guns, flags, and the arrogance of empire. They came to conquer Africa. And one by one, the nations of the continent fell. All except one. A nation that stood tall on the mountains of freedom, a kingdom older than most empires of Europe. This is the untold story of Ethiopia, the African empire that refused to bow. This is how they did it. The ancient empire of the highlands. Long before colonization began, Ethiopia already had a civilization stretching back over 3,000 years. It was home to the kingdom of Aksum, one of the great powers of the ancient world, trading gold, ivory, and spices with Egypt, Rome, and India. Ethiopia embraced Christianity as early as the 4th century, becoming one of the world's oldest Christian nations, long before most of Europe. Its emperors claimed descent from King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, giving them a sense of divine legitimacy that shaped their identity. We are a chosen people, and our land is sacred. So when the European powers began their scramble for Africa in the late 1800s, Ethiopia was not an easy target. It was a proud, organized empire with deep spiritual roots and a strong monarchy. The trap of the treaty. After Italy's unification in 1861, it wanted to join the race for colonies. By 1889, Italy had already seized Eritrea and wanted Ethiopia next. When Emperor Menelik II rose to power, Italy approached him with what seemed like a friendly offer, the Treaty of Wuchale. It had two versions, one in Amharic and one in Italian. The Amharic version said Ethiopia may use Italy as an intermediary in foreign affairs. But the Italian version said Ethiopia must, effectively making Ethiopia a protectorate of Italy. Menelik II later discovered the deceit. He immediately denounced the treaty, rejecting Italy's claim over his empire. Ethiopia is not for sale. Our sovereignty is not negotiable. Emperor Menelik II. From that moment, the path to war was set. The road to Adwa. Italy prepared to invade. They believed conquering Ethiopia would be easy, a quick campaign that would bring glory to their young kingdom. But Menelik II was no fool. He spent years stockpiling modern weapons, purchased from Russia and France. He also built an army from every corner of his empire, Amhara, Tigray, Oromo, Gurj, Somali, Afar, and others, united for one cause, to defend the motherland. By 1896, the Italians advanced with over 17,000 soldiers, armed with rifles, machine guns, and artillery. But Ethiopia's force was massive, over 100,000 warriors, driven not just by weapons, but by faith and unity. Before the battle, priests blessed the soldiers, holding up crosses and chanting prayers. The warriors painted their shields with religious symbols and marched into the mountains of Adwa, ready to face an empire. The Battle of Adwa, March 1, 1896. The night before the battle, Menelik II and his wife, Empress Taytu Betul, prayed together. She was not just a queen, she was a warrior, commanding her own battalion and managing the logistics of the war. At dawn, the mountains echoed with the sound of war horns. The Italians attacked first, confident they would crush what they called a primitive army. But Ethiopia's generals had carefully studied their movements. They knew the terrain. They had spies in the enemy camp. And they struck from every direction. The sky filled with smoke and gunfire. Ethiopian cavalry charged down the slopes, swords flashing in the sun. Menelik's artillery, rare but deadly, rained fire on the Italian lines. By afternoon, chaos engulfed the Italian army. Thousands were killed, others fled into the hills. Within hours, the mighty European invaders were completely destroyed. Ethiopia had achieved what no other African nation had done. Defeated a European colonial army in full-scale battle. The world reacts. When news of Adwa reached Europe, the reaction was disbelief and humiliation. Italy's dream of empire was shattered. They were forced to sign the Treaty of Addis Ababa, recognizing Ethiopia's independence. Across Africa and the Black world, Ethiopia became a beacon of hope. In the Caribbean, in America, and across colonized Africa, people celebrated Adwa as proof that black people could defeat white colonizers. The victory became a symbol of African pride, unity, and resistance. The Second Invasion, 1935 to 1941. 40 years later, fascist leader Benito Mussolini wanted revenge. He launched a new invasion of Ethiopia in 1935, using modern tanks, aircraft, and even poison gas, violating international law. Ethiopian forces fought bravely but were overwhelmed. Emperor Haile Selassie I, Menelik's successor, went into exile and appealed to the League of Nations, delivering a speech that shook the world. It is us today. It will be you tomorrow. Despite the temporary occupation, Ethiopia's spirit of resistance never died. Patriots fought from the mountains, and with the help of Allied forces during World War II, Italy was driven out in 1941. Haile Selassie returned to his throne, and Ethiopia stood free once again. The legacy of Ethiopia. Ethiopia's victory at Adwa remains one of the most important events in African history. It proved that unity, strategy, and faith could overcome imperial power. Ethiopia inspired movements of independence across the continent and gave birth to a sense of Pan-African pride. Even today, Ethiopians celebrate Adwa Day every March 1st, not just as a national holiday, but as a reminder that freedom must always be defended. In the heart of Africa, one nation stood unbroken. Through deception, war, and invasion, it held its ground. Ethiopia's mountains became symbols of resistance, and its people, symbols of courage. When others were conquered, they stood. When others lost their voice, they roared. This is why Ethiopia was never colonized. And this is why the Battle of Adwa will forever echo as the day Africa said, "No more." Subscribe to the Untold World for more forgotten history.